and welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers by gamers. I'm Bajo.
And I'm Junglist. Have you fully recovered, Badge?
I have, thank you kindly, Jung. Just a momentary lapse into the land of the walking dead. All sorted now.
Good then. This week has nary a zombie in sight, but we do have rhythm, tanks, and superheroes.
Patapon 2 sees the return of the stylish 2D strategy game for PSP, where your followers move to the beat of a drum. But does this sequel miss a beat or two?
And Watchmen is the movie of the moment, but as we all know, the transition from movie to game usually spells disaster. Can they land a critical hit?
Games give us the chance to play with history, and in Codename Panzers Cold War, the war is anything but cold, as Russia and the USA turn post-World War II Berlin into a battlefield.
And we visit the Creative Assembly in Brisbane as they put the finishing touches on their game, Stormrise.
Plus, serious games, what they are, who makes them, who plays them, and why. But first, can you guess the game for this week?
News time, Badge.
You got it.
Good game.
There was both good and bad news for Resident Evil 5 players this week. The good news is that you'll soon be able to access an all-new multiplayer mode for the game as downloadable content. The bad news is that you'll have to pay for it. The multiplayer DLC will include a versus mode, which will allow up to 4 players to fight for survival against both the AI opponents and each other. The paid DLC has caused a bit of unrest amongst gamers who have argued that the versus mode should have been included in the original release of the game, or at least as a free download, but Capcom are standing by their decision.
I was having that dream again.
The voice of one of gaming's most iconic characters has this week announced that he's established his own production company that will work on video games. David Hayter, the actor behind Super Spy Solid Snake from the Metal Gear Solid series, has set up a company called Dark Hero Studios, which will, he says, work on films, TV, internet and video game projects in the action, science fiction and horror genres. The company's first project is a dark horror film called Demonology, which Hayter will write and direct himself, although other comic book and video game projects are promised to follow.
Good game.
It seems Russian alternate universe history games are here to stay, and this time around, codenamed Panzers Cold War ignites the Cold War, starting from when a US cargo plane and a Soviet fighter collide during the Berlin airlift.
The campaign will see you protecting convoys, capturing points and domination maps, rescuing friendly soldiers, and sabotaging enemy bases. Cutscenes don't really know if they want to be hardcore or comedy, so they kind of miss the mark a little bit.
Do you hear that?
Hear what?
Kill the engine!
Holy mother of... Let's get out of here!
I do like old man voice in the mission briefings, though.
For the newcomers, this is the worst place on Earth to be right now. We've got a bunch of wartime French bunkers without heavy weapons or adequate supplies. We're holed up in a string of concrete boxes between the devil and the deep blue yonder, outgunned and outnumbered 50 to 1.
Yeah, he's cool. I kept expecting him to offer me a little round tin of barley sugars. Units can be configured and purchased before you actually go into a mission. There's not as much variety as we'd like, but it's okay.
One thing I really like, Badge, was the on-the-fly alterations you can make to your tanks. It costs resources, but it's important to change your strategies on the fly. You can change tanks to have AA guns, more armor, you can make them into mobile repair stations, or even waterproof them so you can go across the rivers that get in your path.
On a harder difficulty setting, you'll find yourself leapfrogging your way through missions, setting up temporary repair stations, and these kind of become a fallback position. But the AI can be a bit inconsistent, and sometimes they'll surround you and you barely get out alive. But then other times, they'll quite happily shoot your front tank for hours, even though it's got 5 repair APCs behind it, meaning it's never really in danger.
If you set up your tanks and healers right, on normal difficulty, you can actually attack move your way through a whole mission and watch TV at the same time.
Vehicle units have 2 health bars, one for the unit itself and one for the occupants inside. So when you get flamethrower units, and there's no nice way to say this, Jung, you get to burn out the humans on the inside, leaving an empty husk of flesh-ridden tank for you to hijack and use for yourself. Actually, there is probably a nice way to say that, John.
You will lose units by doing that, though, and you're often forced to choose how many flame units you'd like to sacrifice to gain one tank. There are lots of little good dynamics like this in Panzers, such as the way they throw little red crosses or spanners to heal. Doesn't look very realistic, but as a game mechanic, very functional.
Another nice touch is the way you can actually jump out of your vehicles at any time and then jump into other ones. And they could have taken it a lot further though, Jung, and I found rather than using the non-combat vehicles, it was just easier to set all your tanks to follow your infantry and just attack that way and walk there.
Often larger vehicles will get stuck in a bottleneck, and after you've sorted them out, they've forgotten where to go.
Yeah, the pathfinding is definitely below par, and it's painful one by one pulling your units out of a bottleneck. I feel like yelling, guys, 1 entrance, 4 tanks, work it out, I've got other places to be.
It's really not good enough, and there's some standard RTS control shortcuts that aren't there as well. And on top of that, a year-old PC with the lowest settings will struggle with this game. It's very resource hungry.
Yeah, now granted this might not be the final code, but this chugs like crazy on my PC, and all of our PCs in fact. And you don't even think it needs to, you know? Like, it's not the best looking RTS out there. It's not a bad looking one, but it's not the best. So we have a bit of a reviewing dilemma because this game chugs so much, and also we couldn't get through it due to bugs about 2/3 of the way through the game. How are we going to rate this? You know, we rate it on what we've got now, or?
I don't think we have a choice. I mean, I'd need to rate what we have here at the moment, and what we have here at the moment is a broken game where we can't even get past a certain point because it crashes. So that's a 3 out of 10 in my book.
I mean, we did get a second copy from the publisher, and we still had problems with that one. So, but I'm going to be optimistic, Jung. There's some good stuff here. I'm going to give it 7 out of 10, assuming all this gets fixed for final release.
Good game.
Has this ever happened to you? Then you need the Waggle Max Swift Time event. Never be caught unawares or unprepared for your daily brush with death. It's perfect for action, personal hygiene, and breakfast. Why risk not having them? Just see the difference the Waggle Max Swift Time event makes. For those educational slowpokes and our cousins down south, the Swift Time event, Swift Time event. Waggle Max, taking control of your life.
Good game. After many years of strategy games trying to break free of the mouse and keyboard, the last year has seen 2 games built up specifically with the console in mind.
End War got around the control issues by having a voice command system, and Halo Wars focused on simplicity and control shortcuts.
Now a third game, Stormrise, will attempt the same with yet another way of issuing fast commands with a controller. It's called Whip Select. Ken Turner from the Creative Assembly in Brisbane is the brains behind the new system and tells us how it all began.
Stormrise, from its very outset, started as almost like a tech demo. We went, hey, what could we do with this? And then from there, the whole thing kind of snowballed along. We built the first level, we got the first little bit of gameplay going, and then it became a concept, and then it got approved, and yeah, so the struggles of making Stormrise are actually built into it. We set out with, for the balance, to look at the whole thing as an asymmetric balance. So we knew that the Echelon were going to be superior range. They were going to have kind of better toys and better mechanical armor and things like that. And at the Psi, we wanted to be sneaky and they're getting close and have really great melee attacks and those sort of powers up close. We looked at starting with that kind of asymmetric type balance, and then adding to both sides, a strength here and a weakness there, and that was the real key, to keep balancing the thing all the way through. And whatever we add to one, we add to the other.
The biggest challenge with making multiplayer levels for a game like this is we're going to let people do things where they can sort of jump up and down levels and create new paths that really sort of mean there's a lot of ways you can get around the map. This is like the collision file for a level, and although it's only about 30 centimetres across here, there's like a kilometre by kilometre of terrain, and this is sort of a level towards the end of the game where we have the player sort of landing on a beach fighting their way up various sort of plateaus and hills to eventually sort of lay siege to a citadel up the top. But the player sees something that looks completely vivid. This is just something simple and blocky, so we can actually get the collision and gameplay sort of stuff right.
With the right stick, you can change who you're actually bound to, because you're actually bound to the unit. You can only see what they can see, and if you want to see somewhere else, you've got to change that unit. And so, using the right stick, you can actually hold it in the direction of one of the unit icons, release, and bam, you go over there. So, and that even works going to air units. So you can probably whip up to the air unit up to the top of the screen if you want to have a bit of a look too. And so, from here, we've got almost that kind of RTS view back again, but we had to earn it. We have to have a unit there to see it.
Now, I've noticed when you go into this mode that you've got most of the resource points are on a big chain along the map. Is that because you wanted a sort of push-pull between the two factions? And
yeah,
can you
absolutely,
cut off one of the points farther on?
Yeah, this is the overview map, and it shows you where all of the resource points are, what the lines of supply are, and it's a great tactic to get in behind a stronger enemy like you've got at the moment and cut off their line of supply to cripple them so that then you can push back.
I don't miss doing research into medieval historical sort of atrocities and stuff, because we did all of that again in Stormrise. So I've done research on the Nanking Massacre and a whole bunch of other things that I want to think about again for quite some time. So I think research is always relevant in games, even if you're not making a historically accurate game.
I love the delivery phase of games because it all comes together. There's guys in the office right now, and I've played in some informal tournaments around the office just to see who's got the best skills, and turns out I'm not one of the better players in the office. We kind of save up our fun to experience that in the last bit, and that's what's the great thing about development.
Good game.
And we'll take a more in-depth look at Stormrise next week. But for now, the Patapon are back, our favourite little plant-like tribesmen who can't resist a good beat.
That's right, in Patapon 2, you're controlling the same tribe with music as they search for the edge of the world. Each PSP face button represents a different drum, and by beating different rhythms, you can tell them to attack, advance, fall back, or defend.
After a few good bars, you'll enter a battle fever, and this gives you combat bonuses, and hitting the notes exactly at the right time will also power you up, and this is reflected in the way your Patapons march and also in the ferocity of their chanting.
The learning curve is quicker in Patapon 2 as well, which is good because the first one felt slow. But it leaves things unexplained sometimes, and you can see why they wanted to do this. They wanted to leave the game uncluttered by tutorials, which is good. But you keep on hitting these walls, which aren't really difficulty walls. They're more like, what do I do here walls?
Yeah, like when it tells you which buttons to press for a special ability, but it doesn't give you the rhythm, so you have to work that out for yourself. Thanks a lot.
And by the loosest definition possible, I guess you could call that a puzzle, but to me it's just stupid. And call me crazy, but that white flashing on the border of the screen, that didn't seem on the beat to me.
I don't know about that one, John. It felt okay to me.
Yeah, I actually closed my eyes for part of it, and I think I did even better. On top of that, some of the chants aren't on the beat, especially the defensive one, and it's really off-putting. And on top of that, the ta part of pata sometimes happens too quickly, and it makes you want to press the button faster than you should.
Don't you think you're just analysing that maybe a little too much?
Yeah, well, I know it's a big deal to say that in a rhythm game they got the rhythm wrong, but I don't know. Whether they did it on purpose or not, I don't know, but something's wrong there.
Also new to number 2 is the evolution tree, which allows you to level up and evolve more specialised Patapon. You can even get magical and flying Patapons now. And as a whole squad, you follow the tank, utility, damage dealer model from RPGs. Different upgrade paths decide things like size, attack speed, abilities, and it gets as complex as critical chance and modifiers to fire and chill resistance.
You can wield weapons like these as well, such as the fire bow, which can cause grass fires that you'll need to avoid. Different weather effects, such as rain and wind, affect how you hunt. And there are 2 new multiplayer modes as well, which really aren't that much to get excited about.
Yeah, I enjoyed these, you know. I think I even got a little bit addicted, but I think this is a game which looks a lot cleverer than it actually is.
I think they spent too much time on the unit abilities and stats and RPG stuff. I would have really liked to see them mess with the gameplay, you know, like Braid or World of Goo. Establish the rules and then just mess with it. Like give me a level where the tempo just gets faster and faster, something like that.
It's very similar to the first Patapon, so similar in fact that it hasn't fixed the first problems. But it's at its best when you're taking down one of the game's bosses. There's something fun about grabbing a bunch of spearmen and just going after a huge monster or a wicked shaman. I'm giving it 7.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Yeah, I'm like you know, I enjoyed it, got a little bit addicted, but after 2 games, they still haven't gotten the core mechanic right. I hope when they make a 3rd one, they just absolutely go nuts with the gameplay. I'm giving it 6.5 out of 10.
This week's What Were They Thinking goes to 2 Human. Now, this was a game which actually had some pretty decent lore behind it, but was completely ruined by an awful control scheme. But if that wasn't bad enough, every single time you died, you had to get cuddled back to life by this angel Valkyrie thing. And it went on for ages, and you couldn't skip it. What were they thinking?
Good game. The ABC and Screen Australia are looking seriously for a new game. But what does that mean?
In broad terms, it is effectively using games technology for a non-entertainment purpose.
John Welsh's company makes simulation games for trains, tanks, and even airports.
The Jakarta project was a little bit of a diversification, but it was using technology that we'd already incorporated with Railcore in a reality center. The trainee will be sitting at an X-ray machine as if they were sitting in the airport. However, surrounding them, and this is where the serious games element comes into it, they've got the full noise, the activity, the disturbances, the frustrations of some of the passengers, potentially if there's long delays. It's about building up a scenario and giving some context to the actual X-ray simulation that they're sitting at. The level of interest that has grown just even in the last year has been tremendous, and you're seeing, as a result of that interest, a lot of if you'll pardon the pun, but a lot of serious focus on serious games.
The interest in serious games has been a long time coming, but today more and more Australian developers are getting serious about their games.
My definition of a serious game is probably quite broad. For me, a serious game is any game that informs as well as entertains. For us, our emphasis is definitely education and information, but we hope that what we build is also entertaining and engaging as well. The idea behind Heroes was that it was a solution for the transport and logistics industry as a whole. When the project first started, they envisaged Heroes being used by maybe 50, perhaps 100 companies around Australia. In the end, it's actually been a lot more successful than that. There's over 300, close to 400 now. So there's a whole range of skills that Heroes trains the player to complete. Stuff as simple as obtaining information within the workplace and using that to complete a work task. And then there's other things that we've incorporated within Heroes, stuff that's difficult to train for and test for in real life, so responses to dangerous situations. So we have packages within the warehouse that are suspect and potentially dangerous, and players have to deal with those and respond to those in a proper and safe way. In the future, I think serious games will be used in every industry sector, so it's really exciting.
Australian serious games aren't just limited to training either. We're also making some of the best social issue games that are taking important messages to the rest of the world.
I saw a news report in December 2006 about Japan's whaling program in the Southern Ocean, and it was only 30 seconds long, and it was at the end of the news after the celebrity gossip. So I thought this should get more coverage, and as a game developer, I had an opportunity to make something that would extend the coverage of this issue. Harpooned is a 2D shoot-'em-up which parodies Japan's scientific whaling program. It's a satirical game, so the objective is to highlight that the whaling program is not scientific, and in fact it's just a commercial whaling program in disguise. The reaction's been very positive generally. Most people understand that it's a satire and get the message after they've played it a little bit. Some people are initially shocked. It's not a funny issue and people don't expect a game about it to be fun. But the people who are shocked generally haven't played the game for long enough and they didn't absorb the message. Video games have the potential to immerse the player in something and teach them without them knowing that they're being taught. So I think as developers we have a responsibility to do more than just create mindless entertainment.
If you want to create more than just mindless entertainment, hit up the Serious Games Initiative website.
Good game!
Raining again tonight. Raining a lot lately. Like heaven is trying hard to wash away all of New York's sins. Waste of time. Steel wool couldn't scour clean this city's soul.
The recent Watchmen film is based on one of the best graphic novels of the 80s, and now a game with the same name has floated onto our hard drives.
Watchmen: The End Is Nigh sees the slightly overweight Night Owl and the bitter and twisted Rorschach as two playable characters in this little 6-chapter beat-em-up, starting with a prison riot that leads you on a chase for the villain Underboss.
Rabid dogs need to be put down.
The strongest part of the game is the combat.
In fact, it's the only part of the game.
That's true, but you know, there's nothing wrong with that. I love a good beat-em-up jung. You ever play the game Fighting Force? Oh, it was awesome. It was this PS1 game. It was on other platforms as well, but it was actually meant to be Streets of Rage 4, and they pulled the name from development, and you could throw your gun at your enemies when you were done with it.
Focus, Badjo.
Awesome game. Anyway, the characters fight, move like they do in the films, which is fantastic, and it also means they fight dirty, so there's no punches pulled. As you progress, you upgrade with new moves and combos.
Rorschach gains rage as he attacks, and this allows him to perform a charge, which has a bowling pin effect. Night Owl builds up his energy, which allows him to perform a stun move, and charges up his punches. His AoE kick is amazing, but soon you stop pulling off the finishing moves because they just take too long.
Yeah, Jung, one in particular with Night Owl, he actually performs this move which knocks an enemy down, and then he gives it a little nudge afterwards. And it's like, stop showboating, man. It's infuriating having this control taken away from you for so long.
We could list all the reasons why this game is bad.
And here they are. While the levels look good, the level design is actually quite poor, so you spend half your time working out which way you actually have to go. There is a guide button you can push, and on the PS3 it's L1, and this swings the camera to point in the right direction. But it's kind of like someone walking up behind you and grabbing your head and twisting it to point a certain way. I'd much prefer some big yellow arrows. That'd be much better.
Co-op is okay, but the camera is too close. And for a game that you can only download online, to not have online co-op, it's only half the cow. Also, if you want to do co-op, you have to play with each character singularly up until a point. You can't just jump in. It's stupid.
It's stupid! While counters and combos are actually quite fun to execute and the timing of them, combat just feels pretty clunky. Clunky! In fact, the whole game feels quite clunky, especially in the physics properties that are assigned to things on the ground like boxes and dumbbells. It just stops you in your tracks. Every game needs a jump button.
Camera angles go into a more dramatic Dutch tilt when you're on low health, and this is actually kind of cool, but the last boss has way too much health, so you just spend half your time running away to regain stamina.
It's a hired goon fest, and goons just come from everywhere.
This idiot must have a death wish!
Even when you're fighting the police towards the end, they seem to be hiding all about the place. So your whole night turns into a series of surprise parties where instead of getting presents, you just get the stuffing beaten out of you.
Bleed you out nice and slow.
I would like to be the owner of the lever and pipe patent in this alternate universe, Badger. They seem to be everywhere, and they seem to do everything.
The co-op moments... No, they're okay, but most of them do feel like time fillers.
Time filler!
So often...
Time fillers!
But most of them do tend to feel like time fillers.
Time filler!
where one of you just holds a door while the other one goes underneath to open it from the other side. And it could be a loading thing, I don't know, but it's definitely tedious.
I felt like I was playing a very good-looking, average movie game. And I was. It may be 1/4 the cost of a normal game, but it's 1/8 the fun. I'm giving it 4 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Way to bring out the fractions, John.
Maths is important.
You know, I actually didn't mind it, despite all the horrible things in the game. It's kind of like eating a big bag of chicken wings. You know it's bad for you, and you're gonna regret it afterwards, but while you're eating it, it's pretty delicious. I'm giving it 5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Good game.
So gamers, could you and did you guess the game for this week?
It was Plock, an obscure platformer that was released in 1993 for the Super Nintendo. You played as Plock, a red and yellow blob with the unique power to shoot his arms and legs at his enemies. Using your detachable extremities, you had to punch, kick, and jump your way through a colourful world to claim back your grandpappy's stolen flag.
The game was fun, but it was also super hard, and the save point system was completely pathetic, something that contributed to many Plock players' rage quitting in a huff. But at least it had some really catchy music.
Is there anything better than a synthesized harmonica, Jung? I think not, and on that note, it's time to wrap up the show.
Next week, Bajo will refrain from horrible puns, and we have both the PC and console versions of Stormrise to check out.
Reporter Ray returns with a look at what effect the current financial crisis has or will have on the games industry.
Is the current financial crisis affecting what you're buying as a gamer?
I say I've been buying less games than I used to. I still do buy games, but I'm certainly cutting back on how many I'm buying. I'm just sticking to the ones I've currently got, yeah.
And Grand Theft Auto gets a portable installment for the DS in Chinatown Wars.
If you're inspired by this week's look at serious games, check out the ABC and Screen Australia's Serious Games Initiative, and drop by our forums for some gaming chatter with the best damn gaming community in the world. Till next time, gamers, Junglist out.
Bajo out.